trying to make me start early. What's going on here?
Yeah, do you want to start early though?
Got like a minute, right?
5 to 3, I just wanted people to tune in at 3. You already started, that seems kind of.
Yeah, no, we can, I mean, we can.
Look,
certainly-
I have a couple of notes that I was writing down, so I'll give it a couple of minutes.
As well, which is a small little school in Iowa, so we had all the same professors. and
Oh,
things
nice.
like that. Yeah.
My wife's an Iowa girl.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
Mm-hmm. She went to.
think Joyce is
University of
ready.
Iowa, though.
Okay, the big school.
She went to big
We actually
campus.
have 2 minutes, and I
Oh.
just wanted to say that I didn't know if you all heard that this was randomly selected. Those questions around. There will be an opening statement and I think about 10 questions, and there will be a closing statement. And then we'll conclude.
Great.
And I will explain this to you. You have a minute 30 for all of those, for each, the opening statement, the questions, and the closing statement. Okay, it's 2:59. People are tuning in already.
Or not.
And will the audience turn off their cell phones? You can play on it, but it has to be silent. And the candidates too, for that matter. If you have a phone on your person, sometimes barking dogs are amusing during candidate forums or something. All right, should we shut that door because there's like children
Yeah, I'll
kinda
set it a
yelling?
little bit, but I'll keep it open just so people can get in.
Oh, yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah.
there's not.
Oh, is that what it
what's
is?
going on? Okay. I was waiting, for kids to come running in here. What's this? Which might be lively. Okay. Okay, here we go. Welcome to the Spring 2024 Monona Municipal Judge Candidate Forum, sponsored by Monona Community Media. I'm Joy Cardine with the League of Women Voters of Dane County, and I'll be your moderator today. The April 2nd election includes a race for Monona Municipal Judge. There are 3 write-in candidates running for the position. Their names will not appear on the ballot. No one filed nomination papers in time to appear on the ballot. So you will see a blank and then a space for write-in. And the candidates we have with us today hope that you will write their name in. The candidates will answer questions prepared by Monona Community Media that include questions submitted online by voters ahead of time. We will rotate which candidate answers a question first and last, and the order of opening statements was randomly selected before this forum. Here is a quick rundown of the rules of the forum. Each candidate will have a minute 30 for opening statements. You will receive a minute 30 to answer each question. You will receive a minute 30 for closing remarks. You'll see a timer ticking down on the screen on the sides of the walls. So when that runs out, you don't have to stop immediately, but please end your thought as quickly as you can. We will continue to ask questions until we run out of time or we run out of questions. Please only respond to the questions being asked and do not reference other candidates in your answers. So let's start with opening statements. And in your opening statement, please introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us more about your qualifications. Mary Burns is first.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Mary Burns. I am a new resident of Monona. I just moved down here in November to be closer to my daughter and her family and granddaughters. I had been up in Oneida County where I was a circuit court judge for almost a year, and during that time I did have experience as a municipal court judge because Oneida County does not have municipal courts. So I had experience with traffic cases, disputes between neighbors, some sorts of disorderly conducts that were tickets, such things. I enjoyed the work along with the work that I was doing as a circuit court judge, but unfortunately I lost the election in April and then moved down to Madison in November. Originally I grew up in Wausau. I graduated from UW-Madison with an undergraduate degree in teaching. I then went back to law school later in life, one might say, and I was a public defender for more than 14 years and did other criminal defense work. So I didn't know about this position until the newspaper article. And when I saw the article, I thought if no one's going to put their name in for a write-in, I would do so because I thought I could help out. Since the only day I'm busy right now is Mondays, and that's not the day of court. So thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa Mahaffey.
Thank you. First and foremost, I wanted to thank you, Joy, for hosting, for being our moderator today, and the League of Women Voters for putting this together, as well as Monona Community Media for helping get this word out, because as noted, there will be no one on the ballot. So I know that we're all glad here to have this opportunity to let people know about us. My name is Alyssa Mahaffey. I am an attorney. I'm a 2004 graduate of UW Law School. I've lived in Monona since 2011. I've been familiar with the community before that when my sister moved here some years before me, maybe 10 years or so before me. And we also brought our mother to town. So we're making this a Mahaffey hometown. Maybe you've heard that name a place or two. I also was a public defender for a few years right out of law school. After that, I decided that I wanted to focus my work on guardian ad litem work, which means I represent the best interests of children in court, and that's been my exclusive practice since I went out on my own in 2015. I also practiced for a few years with a nonprofit public service law firm called Community Justice Incorporated. I was there for about 9 years, so I got a lot of courtroom experience, and I'm looking forward to adding something new to my skill set. Thank you.
Brad Schweiger.
Thank you. A little bit about me. My name is Brad Schweiger. Of course, I'm running as a writing candidate for the municipal judge vacancy. I have been a resident of Monona for almost a decade, moved here in 2014. I have been almost a lifelong Wisconsin resident. I moved down to Chicago for law school and spent about 6 years there in total between law school and work before moving back up to the Madison area and then to Monona to follow my wife's career and her postdoctorate. And we have decided to put down roots in Monona, and we are raising two children who go to school right here in Monona. And I decided at that point in time that it was time for me to be more active, involved in the community. I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I've been doing that work for about 6 years almost. I think it's going to be 6 years this summer. It's a quasi-judicial body, and it is directly applicable. We apply the ordinances and the case law to applicants' fact patterns. I do review those and refresh my recollection every single time. I've been a licensed attorney for almost 15 years, practicing primarily in the area of family law.
Okay, so the first question will go to Alyssa. Beyond knowing no one was running for this position, what are your reasons for wanting to be a municipal judge in Monona?
Thank you. Much like Mary mentioned, it was really that my attention came to this opening because a mentor of mine, Judge Juan Colas, had sent me an email the morning that article came up, and he said, "I thought of you. I believe you've got the temperament and the judgment to do that," and it was really, that really opened up my eyes to the opportunity. And when I thought about it, I thought, well, this really fits well with what my goals have been as it relates to the work that I've done with children in court. And because part of what the municipal judge does beyond speeding tickets and ordinance violations like that is that they also are working with children, both who might have be charged with similar offenses, but also children who are dealing with truancy issues at school, things like that. And I think that it's really an excellent opportunity to make sure that when children get involved in the legal system, that they have a positive first experience, and that's something that I feel like I'd really have the experience in working with children in that capacity. Both explaining to them the seriousness of a situation, but also teaching children that mistakes are things that we can overcome. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to handle those kind of situations, and that's one part that I'm really looking forward to. Thank you.
Brad?
Thank you. When I first heard of the opening, I wanted to apply to be a writing candidate as well. I was unaware that the incumbent was not running, and one of my things, and I had been talking about running for the position with my partners, just kind of more casually, and I didn't want to run against the incumbent, but because I thought he was doing a good job. And I view it as another opportunity for me to give back to my community, and I think that I have the requisite experience to do that. Early on in my legal career, did do public defender work as well. I've done traffic cases and OWIs and that kind of work. And also in my work as a family law attorney, I view it kind of similarly, where there's a direct impact you can have on people's lives, and taking people as a whole, and not just as a black and white judgment calls, but taking people as a whole. It can be teaching moments. I work as a guardian ad litem as well, and work with children and have worked in the CHIP system as well, and have really seen how judges and attorneys can deeply impact people's lives, even if people have made mistakes. And it can be an opportunity, if dealt correctly, for people to overcome them and move on.
Thank you. Mary?
Thank you. I applied to be a write-in candidate because I enjoyed my time as judge. When I did that work up in Oneida County, I really did enjoy working with the juveniles, especially the truancy students, because the nice thing about being a circuit court judge was if they weren't serious about school, I could order them to come and sit in my courtroom through the criminal intake so that they could see what happens to people who have no plans for the future and very little or no schooling and little respect for the system. So, but I do think it's also important that even for these small cases that people have their day in court so that they can say their bit, and then of course if there's some sort of if they don't agree to it, then if it's like Oneida County, we then set it for a court trial, and there's evidence presented on both sides. It can be really interesting. It can be the most important thing that's happened to someone in their life, or a fairly minor thing, but they've got their principles and they want to be heard. So I was very good at listening, and I know that my work in Oneida County was appreciated. I did lose my election, but I got 46% of the vote in a red county, and I took that as a vote of confidence because I know I got a lot of votes from both sides of the aisle. So thank you.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Brad. Describe any judicial experience and any experience serving as an arbitrator or mediator.
Sure. I'm a trained mediator. I did 40 hours of mediation training when I was still practicing in Illinois. I am on the Dane County Bar case mediation list as well to serve as a mediator in that capacity for family law cases. And that's a program where parties can, if they are in a Dane County case or they have a Dane County attorney, can mediate non-custodial financial-only issues in a divorce. So in that capacity, I have experience. I also have experience, as I mentioned before, on the Zoning Board of Appeals right here in Monona. That's a quasi-judicial body that, as I've stated, applies people's sometimes quite interesting requests for their homes to the ordinances and our rules, and we have a structure, and we have to apply the facts to our rubric and our elements that they have to meet in order to either deny or approve their requests. And also, just as something I do almost every year, I think I've missed 1 year, is I judge moot court for the high school moot court competition as well. It's not, but they take it very seriously and they're very good. So I have had those types of judicial experiences.
Mary.
Well, aside from having been a judge for just shy of 1 year, I also was a judge at the mock trial state competition. But I do think, part of being a public defender is you're mediating between the defendant and the district attorney, and you go back and forth from each one trying to find the result that both of them can agree with and find not too offensive, shall we say, or just something that meets the needs of the law and the population and public safety. So I was an informal, you might say, mediator as a public defender attorney, and then as a judge, you're always, especially I found in the family law cases, the contested divorces and such, I would call both attorneys into my chambers and say, look, instead of having a contested trial, what does your client want, number one? And say to the other attorney, what does your client want, first of all? Maybe one of them wants the house. Maybe the other one doesn't want the house but doesn't want to have to pay maintenance. I mean, you're trying to balance and trying to save the county the cost of having a day-long contested trial on a divorce case. And oftentimes, they would settle on the kid's custody, but they couldn't decide on. I had one family that was fighting over the Cabela bonus points, which sounds really bizarre, but these things can be bizarre, and you have to know what's important to each person and come to some sort of compromise.
Thank you. Maybe more on that later. Alyssa.
I was going to say, I think we could keep everyone's attention if we turn this into what's the craziest thing we've seen in family law, because we've all unfortunately had that experience to the nth degree. As it relates to the question at hand, I have also done mediation training. I decided to focus my practice exclusively on guardian ad litem work. For folks who don't know what that is, the guardian ad litem is representing the best interests of the children. And interestingly, and why I'm applying it to this question, is because a guardian ad litem in court has what's called quasi-judicial immunity. And that's really why I think it's relevant to this question, because what I do in my work is that I'm only involved in cases where two different sides see things differently, whether it's the parents or whether it's the social worker and a parent, or Dane County Department of Children and Families. And what I have to do is weigh the credibility of the witnesses, weigh the credibility of the evidence that's presented, weigh that against the legal standards that apply to a certain case, and I have to make a recommendation to the judge, who ultimately has to go ahead and make that judgment, that finding. But I think that is really an experience that has opened my eyes to being a good listener, to meeting people where they're at, and understanding how to engage with lots of people, lots of different folks. And I think that's relevant to answering that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of these questions may go over some of the same territory, but please forgive. The next question, we'll have Mary answer it first. And again, I'm a little bit unsure here. Briefly describe your philosophy of the judicial role and the qualities that are most important for the role. I'll paraphrase that and say, what qualities should a judge possess, and why?
Well, I think the first quality is to understand the law and then apply it, but also to be respectful. I expect people in my court or before me to be respectful, and I will always be respectful. I also am patient. I'm patient, and I understand difficulties in people's lives. I had this policy when I was judge that I had a 5-minute window of tolerance. I wouldn't call a case until at least 5 minutes afterwards, so that, because I knew my clients could never get there on time. And it saves some rehashing of cases if I could give them just a few minutes longer. I do think that I respect people who come to court dressed appropriately, and I did kick someone out of my courtroom in a case that involved a restraining order, and the guy was there wearing a shirt that said F the world or something like that. Anyway, I had the F word on the shirt, and I'm like, yeah, no, you are not in my courtroom with that shirt on. You're going out in the hallway, you're going to take your shirt off and wear it inside out, because you can't come in without a shirt. But I believe that you need to expect respect and teach them also, including the young ones, how to dress for court. No more short shorts. I mean, or I'll have them in court and say, next time wear a whole pair of pants. I'm just feel like starting from the ground up, we need to teach people to respect the court.
Alyssa.
Thank you. I think that the most important qualities for a judge to have certainly include knowledge of the law and ability to apply the law to the facts that you're given. So I fully expect this position to require a lot of experience with the rules of evidence and knowing what you can and can't do. I know that the thing that's interesting about municipal court is that there aren't a lot of eyes on it in a way that's different, I think, from circuit court, and so you need to have that trust in your judge to be able to know that they're following the rules and know how to do that. And I think my courtroom experience has given me a good knowledge base for that. I think also it's extremely important that a judge be respectful. As I said, meeting people where they're at, being culturally compassionate about what has gotten them to the spot where they're in front of you on that day and at that time. So I think that respect and the ability to calmly listen to folks. I don't expect it happens as often in municipal court. It certainly hasn't in the times that I've been observing, both here in Monona and elsewhere. But a judge can really set the demeanor for a courtroom and can help keep things calm, or can have things work in the other direction as well. So I think that those are some really important qualifications and qualities in a judge. Thank you.
Brad?
Thank you. I think, reiterate, I think for the third time, knowing the law. If they don't know specifically, knowing where to look to find the answer if they don't know everything about the law. I think it's a bit of a misnomer to think that all judges know all the law out there. I think a judge that knows their weaknesses and knows where they need to look a little bit harder is important too, to have that humility on the bench. If you don't have perfect knowledge or in-depth knowledge of a certain subject matter, but knowing where to look to educate yourself before that case comes before you or before you rule on it. I think listening is really important, and having compassion for the people who are there. Lots of times people come into court and life circumstances of varying degrees have caused them to be there, and that life experience might be very different than your own lived experience. And you have to acknowledge that, I think, as a judge as well, and really listen to people, and be impartial, and give both sides their say and their day in court. I think lots of times people just want to have their day in court and want to feel like they're truly listened to. And I think when you do that and you treat people with integrity and respect, you get that in return. And I think that's really important. And I think at least from what I've observed, I think we're really lucky in this county to have a lot of that.
All right, the next question, Alyssa would answer first. During trials, a municipal judge is often called upon to assess the credibility of witnesses testifying before the court. Please describe how you would go about assessing such credibility.
Thank you. As I touched on earlier, weighing someone's credibility is something that I'm asked to do regularly as a part of my job as a guardian ad litem. So I think that the things that we learn about how we do that is by watching a person's demeanor, by listening carefully to the details of their statements. I often talk about how the reality of a situation is that I have no truth serum. I cannot just magically ascertain the truth, and oftentimes, we don't always know the truth. It's through people's perceptions of what has happened. So the interesting thing about municipal court is that, we're talking about a level of proof that's clear and convincing. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt, but I think that certainly I have learned how to read people, both through their demeanor, their specificity in their answers, how those pieces add up to the other pieces of the puzzle. If there's an outlier, if there's something there that doesn't add up with the rest of everything else, that gives you a piece of what you need to know. Thank you.
Brad.
First, start by listening to them. Oftentimes, I'm surprised about how many times people will tell you their truth, even if they're not trying to tell you their truth. Observing demeanor is very important. I think being prepared to ask follow-up questions that sometimes can be pointed is a skill and something that can get at the truth. Whether or not people are consistent in what they're telling you. If there's cross-examination, how are they performing there? Are they evasive? Are they fidgety on the stand, or with what they're telling you? Does it change? There's various ways you can assess someone's truth and their truthfulness. I find that a lot in the area of family law. There's often two very different sides to a story in a divorce or a custody dispute. Oftentimes the truth lies somewhere in the middle. As my work as a guardian litem, we work closely with family court services, as I'm sure we have, we both know here. And through that process, it's investigative, and you're gathering the facts, and you're having interviews, and you're taking in everything and seeing what really truly makes sense in the situation. And so there's many different ways.
Mary?
Thank you. I think that the most important thing is to listen and watch. And when I was judge, I wasn't sure how I was going to handle some of these cases, whether it was a divorce case or a small claims, one homeowner against another for damaging the culvert that was between the two properties. I mean, I didn't know how I was going to know who was right, but I found that by listening, there was always, it seemed like there was always one party that I realized wasn't credible. Whether it was the culvert case where the person who was suing had a picture of what the culvert looked like before and after, but before, the culvert was clearly clogged before the people moved in, and I'm like, you can't sue them when it was clogged already. I mean, it's just like they don't have common sense enough to realize where their case is going. Or I had a family law case where the husband said that he wasn't making any money. His wife pointed out that he'd been cutting wood and delivering wood to people for years. He admitted that. Well, every year, yes, same people, yes. Could you remember any of the names? No. Then I thought about myself. I have wood delivered to my house up north. The guy calls me. He remembers my name. I think that I'm like, this guy is not telling the truth about his wood deliveries and his income. And then I took everything else he said with a real grain of salt. So I think listening and taking good notes as well as they're speaking, so that I can evaluate who's more right than and more believable than and more credible than the other.
All right, got it. Next question is going to be directed first to Brad. Many defendants in municipal court are not represented by attorneys. Please describe how you would handle such situations and whether they would be treated differently than individuals represented by an attorney.
Well, I think that that happens a lot, even in family court, where a party's not represented by an attorney. Maybe they think they can do their divorce by themselves, or it's a custody battle, or it's a child support issue, and maybe there's not funds or resources available to an individual. I think oftentimes the courts have to apply the same law and the same rules to parties that aren't represented, and you certainly can't, in a judicial role, be giving assistance to someone that doesn't have an attorney just because they don't. Although from what my experience is that often they get maybe a little bit more latitude in how they present their case, but they still have to know the rules. They have to follow those rules, and there's certain decorum and other things that they still have to follow. Although I think that they just oftentimes it's just a little bit of a softer approach, because in recognition of the fact that they're not trained, but they still have to know how to present the case, but they still get the opportunity to do that.
Okay, Mary.
Well, I do think a pro se person who doesn't know the law requires a lot of patience and some teaching. I do have a teaching degree, undergraduate, and you have to speak plainly and clearly, but I find that it helps for me not to speak as much as I might. I need to give that person time to say their piece. And then, of course, they might repeat themselves and repeat themselves again, but I have to point out to them that just because they believe that should be the law, that is not necessarily the law, and point out that it may be unpleasant to them, but that the judge in all situations has to apply the law, even though I may be sympathetic to their point of view, but the law must be followed. And basically, it requires patience and listening.
Alyssa.
I love this question. I think it's really an important thing to consider, and I feel very fortunate that I've had some fantastic role models to watch in my 20 years of practicing, primarily in Dane County. I've really been able to witness when a judge is doing that well, working with a pro se litigant, versus when it's not working well. And I think that would be a real strength of mine. As I've looked at what to expect with this job, I've spent some time looking through the municipal bench book. So it's an instructional manual, 500 pages of how you do this job and what the rules are and what you need to do. And certainly a big part is explaining rights to defendants and is explaining the system and what to expect as you're going through it. And I had a kiddo tell me once, he was actually listening to me explain some legal processes to somebody who was older than him, and he said, "Alyssa, you're a good explainer." So I think that is a strength that I have, that we don't have to talk in legalese. That's something I've seen, even, like I said, in observing municipal court here in this community and elsewhere, is that it's so easy for lawyers to throw around terms that we're all familiar with, and to talk about ordinance violations or judgments or fee forfeitures or just terms that might not be familiar to folks. So I think that's an important thing to remember with pro se litigants.
Okay, thank you. Mary will answer first. The next question, what are your thoughts on the state of public safety in the city of Monona, and how does the office of a municipal judge play in keeping a community safe?
Well, I think public safety is one of the most important things that the law is supposed to do, is to keep us safe. I must admit that only having been here since November, I'm not aware of problems in the Monona area. I would say that Monona was very safe, and then I'm listening to something on the news and it's talking about a shooting, and I'm thinking they're talking about the South Side or over by Allied Drive, and they're like Cottage Grove Road, and I'm like, what? How can that be? So I know that things are getting more difficult in the Monona area, just because I do think that some families are having tough times. And if there's a family who the father's incarcerated and the mother's working, then the kids coming out of that family are going to need more help. So I think that, especially with truancy, let's keep kids in school. I'm not sure what else if there's a disorderly conduct case that's serious, that's going to be referred to the criminal court, not the municipal court. But I think that safety should be at the top of the list of, and I think that a judge needs to read the body language of someone in their courtroom and see, is this person a safe person that is actually safe in my courtroom, or is safe in the public? So I don't know, I think I would just explain to people that their neighbors are looking for peace and quiet, and so should they be doing that.
Thank you. Alyssa.
Thank you. As it relates to the state of public safety in Monona and the role that a judge should play in that, the first thing that comes to mind to me is that what we're really talking about is local government, and local government having 3 branches that all have distinct roles to play. So I think that there might be a misconception sometimes when folks come in with a ticket and they see the bailiff here from the police department, and they know that the police have written this ticket, and it might kind of look like we're all in cahoots. We're all on this side of the table because we're all together. But really, the municipal judge doesn't work for the police. We're really a connector, I would say, between those 2 separate roles. So I think that the role that the judge should play is to be aware of things, you know, to be aware of what's going on in the community, to be aware of what the concerns are. I reached out, I had a city council member talk to me about what they called the nature of aggressiveness when it comes to pulling people over on the Beltline. You know, seeing that goes along the border of our community here. And that was a real concern. And I think that it's something, again, to be a listener in the community and to be aware of what the issues are. But ultimately, a judge's role is to apply the law to the facts at hand. And so I would be very cautious of keeping those roles separate. Excuse me.
Thank you. Brad?
Well, I think public safety is, I think, of paramount concern with a lot of members of the community. If you listen to what people, say, people are concerned with the perception of whether or not crime rates are rising or not. Certainly, Monona has experienced some, I think, more newsworthy criminal activity lately. I'm just remembering off the top of my head the shooting that was in the O'Connell's parking lot in particular. And gun violence, I think, is just up nationally. Car break-ins seem to be on the news every single night. And I think it's a deep concern to a lot of people. I think that, as a role of a municipal judge, I think the higher level crimes, like are going to, if it's a disorderly conduct or if it's a shooting or, something like that, it's going to be referred up to the criminal court, and it's not necessarily going to come across a municipal judge's desk. But I think keeping in mind that, our society is structured around laws, and those laws are designed to keep us safe. I think we take people with where they're at, and I think there's a balance there to say, well, is this someone who is truly dangerous? Is this someone who just had a bad night and is otherwise a good person? What are the circumstances that brought that person into your courtroom? I think is important to look at when we're looking at public safety in general.
Next question. Alyssa will start. What, if any, position do you have regarding restorative justice for municipal ordinance violations?
Thank you. Well, that's a really interesting question. I think that restorative justice is always a fascinating avenue to take, an approach to take when it comes to handling violations of law or ordinance. And I think that it can be really meaningful, especially as it relates to younger children, or, like I said, first offenders, right? Like people who this is their first interaction with the legal justice system. That being said, I am not sure that I'm able to fully answer that question in terms of like what the boundaries are or what would be allowed or acceptable. I certainly have heard in my conversations with other municipal judges the using an aspect of writing an apology letter, or, certainly community service is something that's made available when folks don't have the ability to pay a fine or something like that. But so I think that it's interesting that I seem to appreciate that in municipal court there's an ability to be more specific to the situation. So there could be some ability to craft some more specific consequences, and I think that could go hand in hand with restorative justice.
Okay. Thank you. Brad?
I think restorative justice is really interesting. There's some research around it that suggests that it's positive and has positive impacts on people's lives. I think especially when we're dealing with like youth offenders, juvenile offenders, and first offenders as well. I think programs that center around that have been fairly successful and can do good. I think in my role doing as a guardian litem in injunctions involving minor children. Oftentimes, maybe it's a high school dispute, and something's going on outside the classroom, and one kid's family is filing for a restraining order against another kid. Oftentimes in those negotiations, you see that what is really needed isn't necessarily a restraining order, an injunction saying these kids can't be near each other. It's more maybe one kid just wants an apology, and an agreement that everyone's just kind of back off and keep each other separate. And in that concept, oftentimes we're able to reach resolutions of guardian items oftentimes on either side of that issue. And like look, they're just looking for an apology and for you guys to leave each other alone. What can we do? And sometimes there's things that we do outside the courtroom that gets that done. And it's kind of in that vein. So I think it's a really interesting concept.
Thanks. Mary?
Well, the only experience I have with restorative justice was when I was in my first position as a public defender up in Barron County, where they are really determined, really had a strong restorative justice program, and I was involved in the part that involved teenagers. And I thought it was very useful to, as Brad said, there's a dispute in the high school, let's figure out what's going on, they had a terrific program. Now, I'm not sure that a small municipal court like in Monona has the structure, underlying foundation to do a restorative justice. It might be something more that can be handled for teenagers in the high school with counselors. So I think there's huge value for adults. I'm not sure that because municipal court doesn't handle serious batteries or serious cases. When someone has seriously injured a family member, then the victim's family wants some sort of apology or restorative justice from the offender, but we don't have those cases in municipal court. So I'm just unsure that it would be really time allowed, that there would be enough time and enough resources to set up a restorative justice program.
Thank you. Next question. We received a lot of questions that I feel you've answered in different ways already about your legal experience. But I guess I will put it out there, since there are several questions along these lines. What has been the general nature of your legal career, the legal areas in which you concentrated, and do you possess any previous experience relevant to municipal court? Perhaps just kind of talk a little bit about how your experience will aid you as a municipal judge. And the person who starts is Brad, I believe.
Yes, I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Well, I started my legal career down in Chicago, and in 2008, and a great year to start a legal career. And I started doing family law right away, and I did that primarily, and that's how I got my start in my legal career. When I came up to Wisconsin in 2011, I started doing work with a friend's needed a Illinois licensed attorney. He was in Beloit, and he had Rockford work. So I started doing work in Rockford, and then was barred in Wisconsin in 2012. And he was doing criminal defense work and took me under his wing and started doing criminal defense and taking public defender cases. I did that for a number of years. I was also doing some civil litigation, small claims work, and I was doing traffic tickets and kind of run the gamut there, from small claims to traffic. I've been in municipal court, assisting in some of the more minor forfeiture kind of ordinance violation cases as well. And then for about the last 10 years, I've been primarily really almost exclusively doing family law, and really took to that, and that's really been my focus, because that's where I thought I could have the biggest impact to individuals.
Mary?
basically, my legal career has been in the criminal justice field. As a public defender, I defended people who could not afford their own attorney, but also did mental commitment cases and juvenile cases. After I left the public defender's office for a year, I was in private practice, and I did some civil things. I took cases from the court and the public defender's office. I did guardian ad litem work, and also before I was judge, and then after, I've been writing some briefs and some motions for a friend of mine who, out of Milwaukee, who does civil litigation. So I have a fair breadth in the legal field. But before, I mean, you don't get to be my age without having been around the block a few times. So, I mean, I was a teacher first, and then at different times I moved to follow my husband to his different jobs, and you can never get a teaching job. If you're new to the city, it's hard. I started my own small business, so I had a coffee shop in Rhinelander for 3 years. I worked for a while in the medical school in Madison while my kids were in college. I worked at a newspaper, so I've been a journalist for a couple of years in Rhinelander. And I mean, I've had my own life experience, as I'm sure Brad and Alyssa have. I mean, I've had a real estate dispute with my neighbor. I mean, so I have different life experiences just because I've had a long life.
All right, thank you. Alyssa, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. As it relates to my legal experience and my legal career, I feel confident saying that I have always been committed to public service. It's why I went to law school. After graduating from undergrad, I started working at a nonprofit family service agency here in Madison. Well, I actually started with Schools of Hope. I did a AmeriCorps Vista program and then moved on to a nonprofit family service agency. And after that, decided to go to law school because I was seeing just those impacts of poverty on folks. I really thought that I'd be a policy wonk and impact things that way, but things took a different turn. After law school, I was hired by the Public Defender's Office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, had a fascinating experience for a couple of years working as a full-time public defender, where I did mental commitment defense, juvenile cases, termination of parental rights defense, just across the gamut. A lot of great experience after that. I went to Community Justice Incorporated here in the Madison area, and there I was working with low-income folks, providing representation, doing everything across the board. And as I said, I've been exclusively doing guardian ad litem work since I went out on my own in 2015, and I still think that that is very much a public service because I'm making sure to put the children's best interests first. Thank you.
Thank you. So one more question before we get to closing statements. Mary would start. Why should the public care about who serves as municipal judge? Why should they vote for municipal judge?
Municipal judge is law at the local level. I mean, it's the foundation of everything, really, and it's the small cases that can make a difference in someone's life. Because if they've got a first offense drunk driving that would come to, I think, municipal court here, you need to make a point that you continue down this road and you'll end up in prison. So I think that in order for people to have confidence in the legal system, it needs to start from the ground up, and that would be municipal courts. And I think that people need to know that the municipal court judge will listen, take you seriously, let you ramble on, at least for some point, until you make your point, and then you can go about your business knowing that you've been heard, and you might not have gotten the result that you wanted, but you felt like you've been treated properly and respectfully, and that the law has treated you the same as they would treat someone whose income is, say, 10 times higher than yours. So it is, I think, the great equalizer with some of these traffic offenses.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Thank you. I like this question. It's really interesting because I think as I've been reaching out to neighbors and, folks in the community, not a lot of people know about this position, right? I mean, none of us here knew that Mike wasn't going to run again because it's not something that we hear a lot about. And when I was preparing for this and preparing for this job that I want to do, I was looking up information about municipal courts, and there's a 2021 Harvard Law Review article that says it's the first, deep dive research that's been done on what actually happens in municipal courts. And because, as I said before, there's not a lot of eyes on this work. And unfortunately, and I don't think it's happening here in Monona, but I think it's something we always have to be aware of, is that there's a tendency at this very local level to criminalize poverty and race. They say in this article that municipal courts routinely lack the usual independence and impartiality and the legal due process that we see in the other areas of our judicial system. And as Mary said, this is a very important court, although it's not seen by a lot of people. So I think that you need to have trust that the person you're electing to do this job has the wherewithal to know how to do the job well, has the characteristics to do it well, and to do it thoughtfully. Because I think if it's not working well, you might start to hear more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad?
Thank you. I think that, as with a lot of things, all things start local and build from there. And so in that respect, I think a municipal judge has a very important role in at least the three branches of government and local, even in the local community setting. It's oftentimes the first place people find themselves in their first experience with a courtroom. If it's a truancy issue, or if it's a simple ticket, and it's that first opportunity to show whoever that person is and however they find themselves in front of you, that you're going to listen to them, you're going to give them the time of day, really, to tell you their story and make their case. And it's the first way sometimes people experience whether or not their local community is going to treat them with respect and integrity. And they might not like the result. Oftentimes, there's always one side that's not happy with the result of a case. But it's that first opportunity for them to see that their community is going to actually listen to them and care about their issue.
Good. Time for closing statements, and Alyssa will start the closing statements.
Thank you. Well, thank you again for this opportunity. I hope some folks are able to watch and listen to the answers that they've heard here today. I also want to thank Judge Colas for reaching out to me and making me aware of this opening. I'm sure I would have heard it through the Monona scuttlebutt, but he was the first one who let me know about it. And once I started talking to my neighbors and friends, it is something that I've gotten really excited about, the possibility of serving my community in this way. It has been just a pleasure to meet more folks and to find a reason to be more involved in our community. Attending, I went to a public safety meeting. I believe that was last week. Going to a city council meeting. I hadn't done that before, and I'm really glad that this has opened my eyes to some really fantastic things about living in this city where I've been since 2011, but it's just been a pleasure to be more involved, and I look forward to that opportunity. I think I will invite people to learn more about me. They can reach out to me. I'm not too tech savvy. I do okay, but I did not make a web page or anything, but you can find me on Facebook. I'm glad to engage with people, set up coffees with people, just talk about what's important to our community members, what they want to know about me. You'll see that I've got a lot of endorsements from several judges that I've practiced before, both who are currently on the bench and who have retired from the bench. And their statements about my qualifications means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad, your closing statement.
Thank you. I would also invite people to just try to find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm not that hard to find either. I think that this role is incredibly important. I'm very happy that when the call went out, that we have 3 of us that were willing to step up and throw our hats in the ring, so to speak. And I think it says a lot about our community that there's this many of us that are willing to launch writing campaigns. I think this is a really important role that, to me, as someone who's been in this community for almost a decade, I think offers me just one more opportunity to give back to the city and engage further in public service, as I have on my committee, serving on the zoning board committee, and I think it's an important role for people to realize exists and pay attention to in this election cycle. So I look forward to a spirited rest of our campaign, and for anyone who wants to reach out to me and learn more. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary.
All right. Thank you, Joy. I thank you for being the moderator, and I thank everyone here involved in setting this debate. It's not really a debate, but setting this opportunity up so that we could all be heard. Well, I am, as I said, I'm really new to Monona. I'm not new to Madison, but I'm new to Monona. But I'm not new to being a municipal court judge, because I did that for a year up in Oneida County along with my circuit court judge responsibilities. I'm not aligned. I don't know if there's factions in the city council like there are in Rhinelander. I don't know anybody. So I don't have any ties to anyone. I don't have any. It's not something that I need on my resume. I've already been a circuit court judge, and the only reason I put my name in was because I didn't know anyone else was doing this, and I thought I could help out the city of Monona. So I do believe in a quiet, respectful courtroom and upholding the law and giving everyone their day in court. So I do ask that you write in Burns, B-U-R-N-S, like the fire, Mary, when you get to the ballot on April 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this concludes the forum with our candidates for Monona Municipal Judge. Thank you, really, for being here. Thank you for stepping up and registering to be write-in candidates for this important race. And thanks to Monona Community Media for sponsoring and organizing the forum. And thanks to everybody for listening. Tell your friends that residents can view this forum on the Monona Community Media YouTube channel. I'm Joy Cardine with the League of Women Voters of Dane County. Thanks for watching, and please vote on April 2nd.
Is this being filmed?